For the first time, I think, in years, maybe decades, we actually know exactly what the SEC chairman wants to do, when, at what pace, and in what order. It's a model of clarity.
Is there any roadblocks? Are there any roadblocks to his agenda getting passed?
Well, you know, if you look at the two items you mentioned already that are featured prominently in his recent speech, where he outlined his agenda, Reg BI, best interest, which is the so-called fiduciary issue for brokers. That is a thorny issue. I mean, that's one that's as old as the ages, and they put out a proposal last year, and I don't think it was perfectly smooth in getting that proposal out. And then, of course, the proof's in the pudding. The final rule is always harder.
I can't believe we're still having this argument about whether brokers should be required to have their clients' best interests at heart. Why is that such a difficult thing to get anybody to agree to?
It's absolutely amazing when you act, and that's why it's aptly named best interest. When you call it Reg best interest, who the heck can argue against that, right? The fiduciary standard, though, that was set out by the Department of Labor under the Obama administration, that's a whole different standard. That was meant to basically quash an industry and to shift all assets into the advisory chain.
Might be good advice for Facebook and Google and some of those companies, too, to think about that. Has that entered their mind even remotely?
I swear, you know, and I'm learning in pharma, too. There's the best interest would
pharma.
help.
No, we got to do the extended release version.
Who are their customers?
Who are the customers?
Not us.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Right.
Absolutely.
So, you know, the SEC seems to be sort of a haven right now of nonpartisanship, and you had an old colleague, I think Roisman is about to go on as a Republican. Tell me about him.
Well, he's fantastic. So Elad Roisman, the newest Republican commissioner of the SEC, was my counsel for years, worked at the Senate Banking Committee. Very thoughtful, very diligent, hardworking guy. He's going to put his head down. He's going to get the work done. He's not caught up in the politics. And I think you're right about the haven point. I think it's a nice little...
Which the rest of Washington have to learn from the SEC.
They have a lot to learn. I think the way that Jay Clayton has taken over that agency, you know, under his stewardship, it really hasn't been a political hot button. And part of that, to his predecessors' defense, I think, is that it's not as hot a time as it was, you know, 8 years ago, coming out of the financial crisis.
Let me ask you a question about sort of hot a time. So one of the issues that you often hear about the SEC, one of the critiques of the SEC in a Trump world, if you will, talking about it being apolitical or not apolitical, is that it has been more pro-business. It has been less aggressive when it comes to enforcement action. Do you agree with that?
No, I absolutely do not. And you know, this is something that I fought when I was on the commission. We were always being criticized by politicians, pundits, and the like. We're not putting anyone in jail. Well, first of all, it's a civil law agency, right? We don't have criminal authority. But that was literally one of the criticisms from United States senators. You're not putting people in jail. And the truth was, the facts will set you free, right? If there weren't criminal acts, if there weren't civil violations, you can't bring a case, and you shouldn't bring a case just to appease the bloodlust.
What was your reaction to the Elon Musk settlement? You know, and then the comments by Elon Musk afterwards?
I thought, quite frankly, it was a pretty fair and well-crafted settlement. I think it was good for both sides. I was very impressed with the commission getting it done so quickly.
What do you think about Elon saying that he doesn't respect them, that he's not going to listen to these things, that he's even though he may not be in charge officially by title, he doesn't need to be, he's the controlling shareholder? A
lot of this, look, it's his right to be able to say certain things, even if he says in an SEC order he's not going to try to doubt the settlement that he's entered into. He's got his right to opine on things.
Let me ask you a separate question. But let me ask you a separate question.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay, so it's a toothless settlement, but the separate issue actually is enforcement of the settlement. So he specifically said on 60 Minutes that he does not have his tweets reviewed by counsel in advance.
Right.
My understanding, if you read
that was part of the order.
The order is that they are required to be. Do you believe that the SEC should take action in that specific case?
Well, look, the SEC should enforce any order. It should give it teeth, right? You can't just have somebody sign up to something and not follow up.
Therefore, you do what?
Well, look, they're already under current investigation on their accounting practices. You have people there looking at documents, talking to people already. My guess is, though, the truth is somewhere in the middle. It seems like with Elon Musk, it's not as bold and stark as he says. My guess is something more is happening there.
You mean in terms of his tweets being monitored?
That's my guess, but I don't know. I don't know all the facts, but I'd find it hard to believe that they would contract to have that in his order and then absolutely starkly say no.
He said on television that he doesn't have them reviewed at all.
Right, but then the original tweet said one thing, and then we found out, that the funding secured.
So it's a question of when he's dissembled?
Why do you have a view that they actually are being reviewed?
Well, I just have a view that the team he's put around him would have a really hard time with them not following the order. And in any public company, I think
you're given the benefit of the doubt where maybe I don't think everyone thinks they deserve the benefit that he deserves the benefit of the doubt. He's crazy about certain things.
I don't know that either, but he's certainly a great entrepreneur. So
yeah.
But again, I don't know all the facts, but one thing I think we've learned throughout that whole matter is that there's a little more than meets the eye.
Cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
Well, that's on the agenda for the SEC in 2019.
Yeah.
What do you think the right answer is?
Look, I think the right answer was what Jay Clayton did, come in and clean up a lot of the fraud. I mean, the fraud was just incredible. These ICOs, they were all illegal securities offerings. Many of them, the money just went offshore. U.S. investors completely ripped off with no chance of the government helping them or themselves, getting the money back. So I think he's done that. He's come in with a big stick. He's beat it down pretty hard. Now they're all coming into the agency. How do we do this the right way? Which is what you're supposed to do in the first instance. But now they're getting the lesson right. They're coming in, and I think now the challenge for the agency is to say, how do we make this legit, right? How do we provide the appropriate regulatory relief?
Is it their job to make it legit, if you will, though, if it's not legit?
Well, if it's illegal, right? So if it was an illegal unregistered securities offering, and now you have to come in and comply, now all of a sudden you're dealing with, doesn't matter if it's a token, Andrew, it's a security now. What do you do with this? Once you have that security, you have brokers and transfer agents and clearing agencies and exchanges. All the registration requirements of the SEC are triggered once you have that security, and that's what they're going to have to deal with. They just had that recent Paragon settlement. There were two settlements, Paragon and AirFox, I think. And in those, they said, as part of your settlement with us, you have to come in and register. Mm-hmm. Now you're going to have those registered securities that used to be unregistered. Anyone who touches them triggers a registration category. The agency's going to have to deal with that, and I think they will.